Over the last year, I've posted hundreds of videos online about healthy eating and living. And after all these videos, I've interacted with thousands of viewers, many of them older adults. And so often I get asked this question: Dr. Anna, what does an example daily or weekly meal plan look like on a healthy eating approach, such as with the Mediterranean diet? So in this video, I'm going to break down an example 3-day meal plan for what I would consider a very balanced, healthy eating approach. And this is going to be pulled from an actual patient's meal plan that I helped create for them. Hey there, I'm Dr. Anna. I'm a medical doctor, and here on this channel, I'd like to share with you the best of what I've learned from my career. So let's dive in. Now, like I mentioned, what we're going to break down here in this video is an example 3-day meal plan that I helped create for a patient of mine. This patient was struggling with being overweight and having difficulty following with just healthy eating recommendations that he's often received throughout his life. Now, what I want you to understand as we break this down is that this is a healthy eating approach that very much aligns with the principles of many different eating regimens. I like to teach on this channel a lot about the Mediterranean diet, but it is not the only healthy diet that this eating plan would fall into. There are plenty of other healthy diets out there, like the DASH diet, the MIND diet, the Ornish diet. You can probably think of names of other diets that would pretty much encompass a very balanced whole foods eating plan that has mostly plants, but sprinkled in lots of other different types of foods. So this patient of mine is not vegetarian or vegan, and he likes to eat a lot of variety of vegetables. He enjoys pasta, and he always likes to emphasize certain foods like tomatoes, onions, garlic, etc. So we tailored the menu towards his taste preferences. So understand that this is just an example meal plan that could work for you, but it doesn't have to be exactly what you eat. So before we dive into the specifics, just some general notes that I like to teach anybody that I talk to, whether it's viewers like you on YouTube or my patients in the clinic. Some general notes of healthy eating. First, no matter what foods we decide to eat, the basis of healthy eating also stems from healthy hydration. So we're going to be able to regulate our digestion so much better if we're staying hydrated. And this means drinking plenty of water, plenty of other beverages like teas, coffee if that's necessary, but trying to steer clear of very sugary beverages like sodas or juice, for example. In this example meal plan, my patient did not drink coffee. It was not his preference, but he really enjoyed tea. So we incorporated lots of those. And I recommend that if folks are enjoying things like teas, coffees throughout the day, as much as possible, to decrease the amount of added sugar in there so that you can have as many of them as you want throughout the day, as long as you're not overdoing the caffeine, for example. And then, as an approach in general, anytime we're gonna make a dressing, whether that's for a vegetable salad, whether that's for a marinade to put on fish or meat, like poultry, for example. So these are gonna be things like olive oil or avocado oil, for example. And then, in this healthy eating regimen, what I was working on with this patient was to help curb his hunger, meaning he would get more full from his meals and would be reaching for snacks less often. So what you're going to notice is that there are not specific snacks built into this, because our goal was to have 3 meals a day that were going to make him feel full a lot longer so he wouldn't need to reach for a snack. But note that if we are hungry, we should not force ourselves to avoid food, because there's a risk of having low blood sugar and feeling lethargic and having a big crash in our energy. So in that case, some of the best snacks that I always recommend are to eat a piece of produce. That could be a vegetable, it could be a piece of fruit, etc. And incorporate some other kind of protein with it. Maybe that's a little cup of yogurt or cottage cheese. Maybe it's some hummus that you're gonna dip vegetables into. So snacks are not to be completely feared and avoided if you are the kind of person that likes to eat snacks. But of course, easy snacks, especially for traveling, are things like nuts or seeds. Now, before we dive into the individual foods, I'd like you to please hit that subscribe button, because you joining our community here really makes it thrive, and it helps all of us learn a lot more. Okay, so the first part of any meal plan is to understand which grocery items we need to be buying in order to make the meals listed. So what you're going to see now on screen is a list of groceries that I recommended this patient buy to make the meals that we talked about. So this includes meats and fish and eggs for this patient, as well as some sources of dairy to provide protein, and even some beans. So these are gonna be things like chicken breast and salmon fillets, and fillets of other types of whitefish like cod and haddock or tilapia, anything that he could find when he went to his local market. As well, this included things like canned sardines, mackerel, some jarred anchovies, and then some shrimp, ground turkey, and ground beef. Next, we focused on having lots of whole grains. So this were things like brown rice and quinoa and farro, as well as rolled oats and pasta. As I mentioned, we had some plant-based proteins as a part of this regimen. So these are gonna be legumes like lentils, or having some cannellini, which are white kidney beans, as well as butter beans, black beans, really any variety of bean he could find. Not to mention chickpeas, which were also ground up into hummus. Now for the vegetables. This patient of mine had an absolute love affair for onion, garlic, tomatoes, zucchini, eggplant, spinach, all of these things, mushrooms. So I told him to buy as many varieties of vegetables as he liked, because this was an area of the diet that we wanted to be very liberal with. We wanted to include as many varieties and to have him eat vegetables as often as possible. Next, we emphasized having whole form fruit. So rather than having fruit in the form of a juice or a jam, eating the whole form variety, which would allow him to get a little bit more fiber into his diet. So these are things like berries and pineapple, bananas, even melons or some clementines, really whatever he could find. As well as buying some lemons, because we use that lemon as a garnish on dishes, which is pretty much a 0-calorie way of adding a lot of flavor. Next, as I mentioned, there were items on our list of dairy sources, so eggs and egg whites bought separately, as well as yogurt, some cottage cheese, some ricotta cheese, some mozzarella, some Parmesan cheese. You get the idea. Then we focused on having a lot of healthy fats in our diet, which would come from nuts, nut butters, or even seeds. So these are things like having almond butter, peanut butter, buying walnuts, buying healthy seeds that provide omega-3 fatty acids like flaxseed and chia seed, and then having some other varieties of seeds that could be sprinkled on a salad like a pumpkin seed. Then we focused on bringing a lot of flavor into cooking with herbs and spices. So whether in fresh or dried form, this would include things like having basil, oregano, thyme, rosemary, dill, you name it. Any of them are on the table, as well as some spices. So things like mustard seed, cumin, coriander, anise. We emphasize lots of fresh herbs and spices because this is one of the best ways to infuse tons of flavor into our cooking and to make healthy cooking a lot more enjoyable. And then finally, we emphasized condiments and dressings to be as healthy as possible. So rather than just reaching for barbecue sauce or honey mustard or pre-made bottled dressings that you can buy in the grocery store, we focused on salad dressings being olive oil and a vinegar, or a squeeze of lemon juice, or a mix-in of tahini. Anything that would allow for a little bit more nutrition and not too much added sugar. And by the way, if you're liking this video so far, please share it with somebody else that you think could benefit from learning about healthy meal plans. Okay, so let's dive into what this 3-day meal plan looked like. For breakfast, I had this patient think about making a yogurt parfait, especially with Greek yogurt, which is so high in protein. And the nice thing about Greek yogurt is it's so creamy. Now, as I mentioned, this patient was trying to lose some weight. So having fat-free or low-fat Greek yogurt as opposed to the whole fat was one of the easiest ways that we could cut down on calories. So having a little parfait, adding some of those berries, some walnuts, and then some of the rolled oats would allow for having lots of fiber, giving us some healthy fats, and having plenty of protein. Alongside with having scrambled eggs that has both the whole form eggs and the egg white, plus adding in some vegetables, spinach, and we did some feta cheese just for infused flavor. Next, we moved on to lunch. Lunch looked like some chickpea salad with tomatoes, cucumbers, olives, any of the vegetables he wanted to put in there, and having some grilled chicken breast, and making one of those healthy sauces we talked about. So maybe making the mustard or putting some tzatziki on it. And finally, dinner had spaghetti or a short form pasta, whichever pasta he wanted, with tomato sauce as the sauce. Rather than smothering pasta in a bunch of cheese, we went for a very light sauce of just pure tomato and some olive oil, salt, and pepper, and a little Parmesan sprinkled on top. And then we talked about having a lot of grilled or sauteed or steamed proteins. So we went for shrimp and some broccoli. Okay, day 2, what did this look like? Well, we started with a piece of whole grain toast with some avocado smashed on it. That's gonna give us good fiber and healthy fat. And then making another omelet. So this one could have a little bit of different variety of vegetables compared to the previous day, or the same thing. Anything that adds a little bit more protein and a lot of vegetables. So this one had some tomatoes, some onions, again, a little feta cheese. Again, these were the taste preferences of this patient of mine. And then what did lunch look like? So we're gonna grab one of those whole grains and make a whole grain bowl. With this, we could go with quinoa that added some vegetables and some kidney beans, whether these were from the can and then rinsed, or if he cooked them from scratch from dry form, that's totally on him. And then for this one, we talked about having like a tzatziki sauce that would add a little bit of protein because there's some Greek yogurt in there. So it helps support the amount of protein, since this lunch was just plant-based foods for all of our nutrients. Since this meal was just plant-based, so getting all of our protein from plants, sometimes it's nice to increase a little bit of that protein with something like a yogurt. And then we talked about throwing on plenty of herbs, a little lemon juice, and some olive oil. All right, and then dinner here, we talked about making a very easy vegetable lentil soup or stew, where you can throw in as many veggies as you really want. Onions, garlic, carrots, tomatoes, zucchini, mushroom, any of those with some lentils, whether they're the red variety or the green variety. That'll give us a nice, bulky, thick stew-like soup with lots of delicious protein. And then we talked about having a second course of being something like a baked fish. Any of the whitefish varieties. It could be anything from cod or haddock to flounder or tilapia. Squeezing on some lemon, fresh herbs, olive oil. I think you get the idea. This is pretty much the go-to recipe. And then following up that meal with a little bit of sauteed or steamed vegetables, maybe zucchini, maybe asparagus. Okay, day 3, what did this look like? Well, this was going to be some cottage cheese in the morning with some pineapple, and then having alongside it a piece of toast and maybe almond butter or peanut butter on there. Then for lunch, we talked about having a caprese salad. This is gonna be fresh mozzarella with sliced tomato, especially heirloom tomatoes in the summertime. Then with some olive oil, some balsamic, and fresh basil on top. And then alongside that, having some fish, maybe it was sardines, maybe it was mackerel or anchovies, and a little bit of rice. And then for dinner, we talked about making a really simple meat sauce for pasta. So this was a tomato base with some of the ground beef or maybe ground turkey, dicing in a little bit of carrots or onion, and topping it off with Parmesan cheese. And this with a side of roasted Brussels sprouts or any other roasted vegetable. So what are the take-home themes that we can see from this healthy eating meal plan? Well, first of all, this is a whole foods diet, mostly plants, not only plants. There's going to be plenty of produce, plenty of sources of healthy fat, things like avocado, olive oil, olives themselves, as well as having nuts or seeds to provide lots of healthy oils, and having plenty of variety of protein sources. So these are things like chickpeas or beans, so plant-based, or having something like a yogurt or having something like egg white. But not only that, including a little bit of meat where we needed to. Grilled chicken breast, ground turkey, ground beef. So all these together make what I love to call the healthy trifecta, which is having fiber, healthy fat, and protein at every single meal. Doing this will allow us to ease our digestion, decrease the spike in glucose that we get after a meal. So in other words, regulating our blood sugar a little bit better so we can maintain our energy and avoid crashes and burns later in the day. Now, as you can also see, this patient of mine loved pasta, as well as I do. So it was really easy for us to come up with some ways to have pasta, not every day, but almost every day, in a healthful amount, and not having pasta as the entirety of the meal. Having pasta alongside some other vegetables and another protein source. As well, you can also see that all these meals were really simple. We're talking about steaming some vegetables, grilling or baking some fish, boiling some pasta, rice, or quinoa, making a simple soup. All of these are really easy recipes, and that's something that I love about general healthy eating plans that kind of accord with the principles of the Mediterranean diet, because they're very simple, the ingredients are simple, and pretty much anyone, even without a lot of cooking skills, is able to put them together. Now, if you liked this video and you're ready for much more information on how you can start planning your own meals and adopting really healthy eating, like the Mediterranean diet approach, you're going to love lots of my other content on this channel. I dive very deep into different recipes, things to think about, and tips and tricks. Jump into that content. I'll see you over there.